My name's David Cohen. As they said, I am the CEO of IAB, and we have an awesome panel for you today. So if we can just go down quickly on the line, just introduce yourself. Where do you work and what's your responsibility?
Hi, I'm Ekta Chopra. I'm the Chief Digital Officer for e.l.f. Beauty, and I oversee all aspects of technology, data, AI, as well as the business side of our D2C business, Amazon and retailer.com.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Ng. I'm the CMO of Typeface. We are a marketing AI startup in the Bay Area. We automate campaigns from end to end, personalizing content integrated into your marketing tech stack.
Hey everyone, I'm Michael Komasinski and I'm the CEO of Criteo. We are the world's leading commerce media platform.
And last but not least, I am Mark Wagman, Managing Director at MediaLink and a partner at UTA. I oversee a lot of our consulting work across both the buy side and the sell side of the advertising industry, as well as running our data and tech practice.
All right, awesome. So I've been here for a day and a half, and funny enough, I have not heard anyone talk about AI. So we're going to do that today. And the title of this is AI at Work, Turning Hype into Hard ROI. And we're going to start with some definitions. And let's just do this as a jump ball, whoever wants to take this one. So AI comes in lots of different flavors. AI has, we have predictive AI, which we've been doing for a long time, a decade plus. We have generative AI, which has been on the scene for, let's say, 2+ years. And we have the new belle of the ball, which is agentic AI, which is lots and lots of conversations over the past day and a half around that. Of those three modalities, which one are we most excited about in terms of transforming the marketing process? Who wants to grab that?
I can take it. Generative AI is sort of the thing that we've all been talking about. It's about the ability to create. It's really about helping individuals become more productive, create content, writing, imagery, videos, and such. And you hear a lot of talk about that. But what we're now seeing is this shift to agents, which is really about performing tasks, taking actions. And so you're no longer just prompting, you're working alongside this entity that is basically tasked with doing a thing. It could be booking a ticket on a travel site or buying a product online, but it's really about automating the task and leveraging AI to do that work for you. And that is the next chapter that we're now entering in AI.
So you don't want to choose one, you want to do two. Generative and...
I think, one doesn't replace the other. It sits on top of it. So like, predictive AI, which is what people used to call machine learning, like recommendations, next best action, that's still very much a thing. But everything is really additive. It's like layers on a cake. And now we're in the agent side. And now you're hearing more about orchestration and how workflows and tasks and processes come together to produce some end result.
Ekta?
I'll just add there that I agree with him, but I think just as a practitioner of, we have built internal agents, we've been testing different platforms. The fundamental thing that I think still sort of needs to be solved for is if you're not a data-centric organization where you have your plumbing right, you know where your data sits, how it's sitting, how it's talking to each other, then that's where agentic AI doesn't give you the full scale. So for me, I would say as a practitioner in this space, the thing that I've learned over the last few years or so with testing and learning is without that plumbing, no matter what you do, you don't solve for the real business value from an enterprise perspective.
Amen. Totally agree. Michael or Wags, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I wanted to build on the additive part and talk about that from a channel perspective, because that's the part of this that I'm really excited about. So agentic commerce as an incremental channel to what we have available to us today, right? And that's sort of how we look at the world from Criteo, that these new technology advances that we have, they typically don't replace anything. We still do email marketing. We still do direct mail, right? Nothing ever goes away is the phrase I use. And agentic will be no different than that, right? And I believe further that it's incremental to the sort of efficacy of the channel mix that we have today, right? Because it fills a use case for discoverability that's actually not very well met today. And so this notion of additive like really strikes a chord with me, but maybe more from a channel perspective. And that's a lot of how we're shaping our roadmap against that in the next couple of years.
Okay, Wags, anything to add or no?
I mean, I guess a little bit of a hot take on the other side of that is I still think we're scratching the surface on the generative side, and it feels a little bit like we've jumped the shark right into the world of agentic, not just in the world of marketing, but also in our own personal lives as consumers. Right? I don't know if we as individuals and people have adopted any technology as fast as this, but I think agentic takes it maybe that step further. So no, just maybe the fact that I think agentic is the most exciting, but at the same time, there's still a lot of runway, if you will, with the.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
One more jump ball. So many teams are testing, right? Many teams are trying, they're exploring, they're in pilot mode often. What is the tipping point that takes a brand or a marketer from testing to a scaled proposition? Maybe, Ekta, I said I wasn't going to do a jump ball, but maybe you're the best to answer that.
Yeah. So what we've seen is typically, you encourage people, like from a technologist perspective, I have to wear both hats. There's a security perspective because we're a public company, but then there is how do you rally these change agents in your organization to adopt AI? So I would say it's top down that, hey, we as an organization are going to be AI first in X number of years, let's just say. And in that journey, we have to have a workforce that is ready to do that. So top down is the narrative that we're going to do this. It's an uncharted territory. We know we're going to test and learn, but one clear deliverable is that everyone in the organization has to be able to talk, learn, and speak and work with AI, because it's not an enemy per se, but it's something that's going to help you. So I think it's a little bit of both that we are trying to take.
Yeah.
Did you want to add something?
Yeah, I would agree 100%. Like when we deal with a lot of our customers, many of which are Fortune 100 companies, what we hear the most is it's a cultural change. It's an issue of change management. And to do change management effectively, you do need that top-down mandate. You also need people bottoms up who are willing to embrace this change. And quite frankly, people who are willing to fail at it. And the way I see it is sometimes with AI, you're not going to get it right the first time. You're learning a new skill. It's not a tool so much as it is a system that you need to adopt to in order to change how you work to get the right outcomes. And so therefore, as a result, you need to think about it as it could be a step back, it could be 2 steps back, but it's 10 steps forward in terms of what you will eventually be able to do when you use it right.
Okay, we're going to do this one. Everyone's going to take a stab at this. All right, let's start with you, Mr. Wagman.
Yes.
What specific problem or inefficiency did AI help either the clients that you work with or your company, maybe the clients that you work with? What is it solving? Like, what is AI fixing?
Yeah. I'll give you 2 quick examples. Internally at MediaLink, we are a consulting advisory firm. And we've got decades and decades of, not decades and decades, 20 years of
2 decades.
2 decades, multiple decades of materials and knowledge, right? All big consultancies, not new. We've built a model on top of that that allows us to extract more out of it. Helps us not necessarily get to a final scope that I put in front of a customer, but certainly helps us ideate in terms of what's worked and what hasn't over the past. I think with customers, I was going to say the number one thing we see right now in terms of being able to prove, to your point before, David, what takes this from like a little pet project to like a real thing? For us, it's when does AI, in air quotes here, move from single department to multi-department, right? When do you get out of the silo and like have one email team over there say, hey, we use this cool tool, we did this, to now that email team working with the point of sale team, working with the back-end data team to actually put something together across the board. So a lot of times for our customers in marketing, that comes across in insights development, right? Things that an agency will drop you 50 reports on a Friday in a PDF form, and now you got to make sense of it, right? So how do you start to take that and not only just make sense of the reports itself, but tie that into the CFO's world, right? And how does that show up on the bottom line or on the P&L?
Got it. Michael?
Yeah, so for us, it's using AI to basically make all of our tools easier to use. So making all of them conversational, prompt-based, and looking at that end-to-end workflow, right? The whole process of media is like more labor-intensive than it should be. And that's actually why you see so much progress, I think, across this whole industry, especially in the last year, because there's just tons of like effort coming out of the process, whether that's insights to develop an audience or developing that audience itself, to setting up a campaign, to optimizing it, to measuring it, reporting. Like there are a lot of steps and setups in that, a lot of screens to navigate. So you've got training time invested in that. And so by using AI to basically take a lot of that out, we make our clients more efficient. They can redeploy that time to spending, like trying to be more insightful and sort of go next level on strategy. And I think that that's a big industry trend, in this room and in this event. A lot of the platforms are becoming like massively more efficient in an end-to-end way. And that's good for marketing in general. So it's really positive.
Awesome. Jason, what problem are we solving?
Yeah, I think there's 3 dimensions. There's ultimately business outcomes. So like think about it in terms of performance. And then there's quality. So if you're a marketer creating campaigns or content, you want to see that the quality is as good as what you would do if a human did all the work. And then there's speed. And so how fast and how efficient can you do things? And theoretically, AI can solve all 3 of those things, but we're sort of at different scores, if you will, across each dimension. I think speed is definitely an area where people are seeing immediate gains. But quality, it's a mixed bag. Sometimes you see AI-generated campaigns that you couldn't tell it was AI. In other cases, you could tell it was AI. And so a lot of that is the work of the LLMs and the underlying models to get there. But it's moving really quickly. And so when you have speed and then you have quality, it's like a multiplier. Then you have performance. And we are definitely seeing customers that are seeing better results than others because they're at various stages in where they are on that equation. But I think really every business owner, every CEO wants to see that business outcome. And it's about really optimizing against those 3.
I mean, what I would just add is that, there's 5 stages of maturity here, from awareness to testing and learning, orchestration, integration, and optimization. e.l.f. Beauty, we have multiple brands. They all sit in different sort of spectrum. But from an enterprise perspective, we are in orchestration. And here's the reason why. We're done testing and learning. It's about how do you leverage agentic to provide true end-to-end business value is our focus this year. And once again, that starts with the plumbing work that has to be done. To your point of, individually, people are using AI, but when you start using it cross-collaboration, that's where the value comes. So things like autonomous, month-end close. Can we get to a 40% autonomous month-end close? That's a financial metric that we want to achieve. Can we have our content supply chain deliver 3x volume using end-to-end? So there is real KPIs tied to what we want to do now.
Awesome. I'm encouraged by that. That's awesome. That's fantastic. All right, Michael, you were so comprehensive with your last answer. You answered some of my next question already. But the rubber is gonna meet the road because we want to have specific examples. I'm gonna ask each of you a set of questions. So give me a proof point. So an example of where AI-driven optimization or prediction led to a step change in campaign ROI. If you want to talk about a specific client, that's great. Categories, fine. Give me a specific example.
So we developed a new product called Commerce Go, which essentially takes and automates most of the steps that I talked about in my last answer. The way we sort of pitch that is 5 steps to active campaign. And we did that by automating a lot of those steps, building that into the back end. And what's interesting about this platform as we've started to roll it out is we get over 20% improvement in ROAS. And there's only 5 steps to set it up versus a managed service, which is a custom effort, right? And so it has better performance, lower churn, and higher customer satisfaction. So, I mean, it doesn't get any better than that in terms of the ROI on that. So it's really encouraging, like, when you get the people out of the way, maybe we weren't helping as much as we thought.
Okay, we won't touch that one. We'll go to the next. Jason.
Yeah.
So going to talk about so Typeface. You're in the business of using AI for on-brand content.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
So how are marketers quantifying the business impact of generative content? So how do you determine success in that world?
Yeah, so a lot of times when customers start with us, they're running pilots and they're comparing, they're doing some sort of A/B test versus control of like, what does it look like with AI and without AI? And what we've seen is the time to market on AI-driven campaigns, it is a magnitude different in terms of speed. Like you're doing campaigns that used to take you like 6 or 7 weeks in a matter of days, sometimes hours for some customers. So we see that in the speed improvement. And then in terms of content velocity and content supply chain, they're able to create assets at an order of magnitude higher so that they can run global campaigns or they can run highly personalized campaigns tied to the data that they have in their customer data platform to do true one-to-one personalization. And we know that when content is more relevant, you see improvements in terms of engagement rates, open rates, like for email, for example. And on average, we're seeing like triple-digit basis point improvements in terms of open rates and click-throughs.
So I know everyone is hesitant to talk about a specific brand, but I'm going to ask you, Jason, to just double click on that. Could you talk about a specific brand that you worked with that showed some significant improvement in ROI?
Yeah, I won't list the brand because I don't have the customer reference approval, but it is a global media company, not a advertising media, a television entertainment media conglomerate that has been using Typeface, and you don't always like them because they control the predominant market share in the category, but they are seeing across different product offerings from their voice to cable to their television show selections, like a huge improvement in terms of highly personalized campaigns at the individual level. And so we're pursuing a lot more deeper use cases because, again, like Mark said, it runs from oftentimes like business line to business line, but there are certainly very promising results that they're seeing from the use of our AI solution.
Got it. All right, Ekta, what is one AI-driven initiative that has materially moved the needle on sales engagement or moved the brand forward?
I can't say one, but I will give you example. So I would say one, this has been since the beginning of ChatGPT was launched. We wanted to test and learn. We're very much about eyes, lips, face firsts, which means we're not that big brand that has a lot of tons of money and dollars, but what we want to do is be the first in the market. So we created our internal, it's called e.l.fluencer chatbot, essentially. So what the problem that we were trying to solve for is that we have 20 million, sort of community members engaging with us. Our consumers are engaging with us, but we're not answering every single comment. So how can I do that without adding more headcount? And fast forward right now, these are the results. 90% of our comments are generated by AI, but touched by human. The human is always in the loop to ensure there is the brand engagement. Our community has told us they do not want to be talked like as if it's AI. So we want to make sure the human element is there, but it helps the human actually, answer more comments. So that's one example, which we have taken to scale, and it's in production.
Got it. So having two Gen Z daughters, God help me, you talk about moving from personalization to hyper-personalization. What does that mean? And can you talk a little about what you learned there?
Oh my God, personalization has been around forever,
yes.
Right? And hyper-personalization goes back to what you just said, which is one-to-one, that moment in time. It is an impulse generation, right? I want it right now. And where can I get it right now? So when you think about agentic, that's making that possible. But in the old sort of a world, what you had to do was have that one single golden record of the human. Now you have to know your agent. That's the most important thing. And the reason, this is where brands have to evolve. it might not be humans that are shopping anymore. It's their agent that's shopping. So how do you make sure that your product lines and your product feeds and your content feeds are ready to be talked or engaging with agents? And I think that's like the biggest thing that I think personalization will end up. It's not, you're no longer personalizing for a human, you're personalizing for an agent.
Nice. And then one last one for you. One operational or marketing workflow improvement. Talk about one of those.
Yeah, so I think there's several that we've taken on, but retailer.com. So, that's one business that I oversee. So we have Walmart, Target.com, and so forth. And each website has specific sort of requirements around PDPs and how you show up on that site. It was all manual or through manual feeds and so forth. We're doing that through an agent. So we have trained an agent on all the specs for Target.com, Walmart.com, Ulta.com, and now it's one person doing all that work through engaging with an agent.
Very, very cool. Okay, good. Mark, you're gonna the last one for you. You work with lots of clients. You are in lots of rooms of C-suites talking about all this stuff. When you look across the ecosystem, who is actually realizing today AI ROI, and what are they doing differently than those that are still stuck in the test and learn phase?
I think the biggest thing is they're looking at this as a force multiplier, not a cost savings thing. And we've been talking about this for 3 years on these stages, and I'm not going to reiterate that. But this is not about using AI to get rid of Timmy and Susie in the corner. This is about giving AI to Timmy and Susie in the corner so that they can do what they do better and spend their time on the things that require human nature. So I'll give you an example. Pharma company spent every time they would, going back to the content supply chain, every time they would use their creative agency to develop a set of creative units, given the sensitivity of the category, they would spend literally 3 weeks of human people going through making sure that these ads fit brand standards, right? You training a model, using it, right? They've taken 3 weeks down to about a day and a half, right? Because now they can focus on the 10 or 15% that might be problematic. They can look at them, they can compare them to the regional nuances and do all the manual stuff that does still require a human to look at that and say, well, that may be a little risky, but let's go with it, or absolutely not because of this law in this country and this thing. And so I think the brands that are actually realizing ROI are the ones who are not afraid to realize that every AI implementation isn't necessarily the sexiest thing that they're doing, right? The amount of cost savings and efficiencies you can gain from invoice reconciliation to insights development to synthesizing your competitors' 10Ks or quarterly statements, whatever it is, the stuff that behind the scenes, that just frees up hours to do the stuff that will allow you to leapfrog your competition, right? If you think you are, in any given category, there's only one leader. If you're 3 or 4 or 5 in that given category, AI should be the tool that gives you the right and ability to leapfrog your competition, not just run a more efficient business, if you will, if that makes sense.
Totally does. So we as humans are habitual beings, right? For years, we have done incremental change. We start with last year's plan, we change it, tweak it a little bit, and then we have this year's plan. What is one thing that we as a industry need to slough off? What is an old marketing muscle that we need to put to bed if we're going to capitalize on the opportunity of AI? That's a jump ball.
Yeah, I'll say,
It's a
I've
stumper.
led marketing teams for a while, and a lot of times people would get credit for output, or they do a lot of activity, or like in tech, we call it busy work. And I think in marketing, there's a lot of tasks that it takes long, and you appreciate the effort, and you appreciate people who can produce volume. But now that AI kind of takes volume off the board because it can do that, to truly differentiate and stand out as a brand, you need taste. You need to be able to tell a story effectively. You need whatever you're placing in front of an end customer, you need that to land, and you need to move them to whatever it is you want, like whether you want them to buy something or visit your website or what have you. And so I think when I talk to marketers or people starting their career, I tell them, have taste, know what good looks like, and understand, go back to Ogilvy on advertising and understand how he looked at what great advertising is, because it's going to come back to a lot of those principles. Once we're all using AI and we've automated what can be automated, it's going to come down to taste.
Got it. Okay, 2 last questions. We're almost out of time. This is a one that everyone asks, so I apologize in advance. But a year from now, we're back at CES. There's an awful lot of conversation around AI at this CES. What's one thing that is going to surprise us a year from now? What are we not looking at? What do we think is overhyped? Give me something. Jump ball. Michael?
Yeah, sure. Think it's a little bit too, but I'll blend them. All of these sort of forecasts about death of
Yes.
will be null and void. And what we'll find is that most of these scenarios have turned out to be incremental, in particular with e-commerce, right? And back to the agentic topic. It will unlock incremental sales in the e-commerce channel that otherwise would not have been unlocked. And there actually won't be very many deaths of, if any. There'll just be incremental volume in, one of the most interesting retail channels in the world.
One more surprise, Ekta?
I think it'll be the channel shift of shopping from what we call social commerce today to truly connected commerce. And it is in the form of, shopping in ChatGPT or Perplexity and Gemini. So I think the shift will happen of that channel mix faster than it ever did before. So.
Got it. Okay. Last thing, my favorite. So humor me. We're going to do word association, right? I'm going to say a word or phrase. We're going to go down the line and then back this way. The first thing that comes to your mind, one word. Okay? Sometimes this is fun. Sometimes it fails miserably. So hopefully this will be good. First one is personalization at scale.
Power.
Power, okay?
Table stakes.
Michael?
2024.
I was going to say last year. That's 2 words, so sure.
Okay, Wags, hallucinations.
I could take this so many ways.
First thing.
Hallucinations. Part of doing business. I mean, it's part of playing in the game. I don't. Yeah.
Okay, that's definitely more than one word. Michael?
Human oversight.
Guardrails.
Protection.
Programmatic. Ekta?
Autonomous.
Okay.
Everything.
Michael?
Changing.
Inefficient.
LLMs. Wags.
Big.
Incomplete.
Infrastructure.
Scale.
Now we're cruising. Trust and transparency. Ekta.
Table stakes.
Prize zero.
Table stakes.
Ooh, yesterday's news.
You guys are doing so well. That's
I
2
know, I
words.
ruined it. Sorry.
All right, Wags. Search.
Alive.
Oh, nice.
Bifurcated.
Mm-hmm.
AEO.
GEO.
Good. Okay, 3 more. Prompt engineer. Ekta.
Must.
Yesterday.
Gen Z employment.
Okay.
Experimentation.
Okay, agentic. Wags.
Future.
All in.
Orchestration.
Orchestration.
All right, last one. CES.
Awesome.
All right.
Move to February.
That's 3 words, but we'll keep it. We like it.
Thriving.
Vegas.
Nice. Please join me in thanking my panelists.